The Paldea region, the beginning of countless adventures, emotions, and visions of our beloved Pokémon world. It's not a lie when I say that it's been a long time since a Pokémon experience brought me back to the innocence of childhood in such a way. But sometimes, a weird feeling, I can't explain it, feels like something terrible is about to... No, I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about the Legendaries and their particular catching method in these games. In such a bright adventure, encountering such ominous stakes every now and then, it's disconcerting. And when you finally embark on the quest to find all of them scattered around the region and break the ancient seal, the game warns you about how you have just unleashed a terrible peril, locked away for centuries. COVID-19, welcome to Paldea. No, seriously, what happens with these legendaries? It's always a shock to meet a Pokemon for the first time. They tend to feel strange until you get used to them, but this is a whole new level. What's with all these designs and those Chinese names? What are they doing in a region based on Spain?
This is exactly what happens to bad students. Yes, I'm looking at you. I know that you have been ignoring the classes at the academy.
Believe me when I say that if you are a diligent student, you can learn some incredible things from them. Well, some of them, like the classes of Rayfort, the history teacher, in which he tells us the true history of these otherwise unknowable legendaries. Many years ago, the Paldean Empire was ruled by a greedy king. His obsession was treasures, and his only objective was to see his fortune increase more and more. One day, a merchant from the east arrived in the kingdom, interested in the rumors about the monarch and his fascination to exotic treasures from distant lands. He presented himself before his majesty and offered him 4 special treasures: a vessel, a sword, some writing tablets, and some beads. The king, delighted and having never seen anything like that before, covered the merchant with gold as a reward. That same night, after leaving the newly acquired treasures under good protection, a terrible catastrophe reduced the castle to ruins. Following a fierce struggle, the most powerful wizards managed to seal the beast. But after that incident, the Paldean Empire would soon collapse. That is the thrilling myth of the Treasures of Ruin, Tinglu, Qianpao, Woqian, and Qiyu. These objects were none other than Pokémon, cursed Pokémon that fed on the negativity and greed of human beings, until the king's actions were the straw that broke the camel's back, and they woke up. If in the Therian forms of the forces of nature, we found the equivalent in the Pokémon world of the 4 symbols of Chinese mythology, the Treasures of Ruin would be based on their terrible opposite, the 4 perils. Tinglu is Taoti, with an insatiable appetite and often depicted on bronze ceremonial vessel prints. It appears to be identical to the object this Pokemon was before it awoke. It represents gluttony, and it's believed that these vessels were used to offer sacrifices to the insatiable spirits of the dead. Qianpao would be Qiongqi, a beast symbolizing everything that's wicked and treacherous. It is known for its eagerness to devour humans, and is so evil that it's said that if it were to witness a dispute between a righteous man and a wicked one, it would devour the righteous one first. Woqian is Tao Wu, although usually is depicted as a tiger with disproportionate fangs, implying that Qianpao may also have been inspired by it, symbolizes ignorance and bad advice, as could be represented by the tablets it used to be, an object used to spread both knowledge and misinformation. Finally, Qiyu is Hundun, the beast of chaos, but also a way of referring in Chinese to the primordial chaos. Another of its depictions is the flowing between turbid waters, hence its delirious aspect of a fish. Furthermore, Hundun is usually depicted as a faceless winged creature which Qiyu resembles if one ignores the beads that serve as its eyes. Although that's their inspiration as a group, individually, they are all inspired by animals that Chinese culture associates in one way or another with good fortune, but distorted and subverted to represent misfortune and wretchedness. Woqian would be a type of tea called Biluo Chun. It literally means green snail spring, because its leaves are processed in the shape of a snail, giving it a strong resemblance to the Pokemon. The tea is associated with a legend where it represents abundance and the healthy growth of vegetation, but the twist is that this Pokemon has a withered and decadent appearance, symbolizing the opposite. Qianpao would be a white tiger, which represents peace and is said to appear only in front of an emperor who rules with absolute virtue. but this time it is a saber-toothed tiger, implying that instead it brings war and confrontation. Qiyu is the most obvious. The golden carp is one of the best-known Chinese symbols of wealth and prosperity. However, its peaceful swimming is awful because it swims calmly through the seas of magma it creates by melting the rocks and gravel in its path. The last one is Ting Lu, a deer or moose, with its last syllable in Chinese meaning deer and the privileges of nobility. The animal represents wealth and success, but the rusted bronze of its vessel alludes to the opposite. Yeah, that's all nice, but why are they here? Wouldn't you expect, as has been the case with the last few generations, legendaries that are more closely tied to the culture of the place from which the region draws its inspiration? As it turns out, believe it or not, these two nations had a deep connection many years ago. Around the time in which the story I told you before is set, both empires first benefited and then destroyed each other. Without going into too much detail so this video doesn't become a dense history lesson, different circumstances led to Ming Dynasty China becoming dependent on Spain's precious metals. This was an era of splendor and mutual enrichment that, however, was unsustainable, creating a bubble that would burst and bring the beginning of the end for both empires with a terrible economic downturn. Perhaps this mutual history of rise and fall was the basis for the collapse of the old Chaldean Empire, and who knows if a possible imperial Pokémon China also collapsed for the very objects brought by that merchant. And all for the sake of gold. Because there is still a piece missing. There's someone who carried these objects, and contrary to legend, it didn't go so badly for him apparently. The merchant not only got rid of the objects, but also managed to get gold by giving them to the king, and then retired to a presumably happy life, right? What if it's the opposite? What if he was in fact the most unfortunate one in this story and was literally covered in gold? In the same time period, it was popular in the Spanish Empire, a horrifying execution that consisted in pouring molten gold down the throat of the executed person. Maybe the king, instead of buying the objects from the merchant in his greed and thirst to get richer at all costs, bathed the merchant in molten gold, killing him. It would make sense that it was this particular episode of pure evil that awakened the perils, because if he had simply bought them, he wouldn't have done anything so terrible as to bring them back to life. The wickedness of the king betraying someone like this, and the greed and selfishness of the merchant aiming to get richer even at the cost of bringing disaster to an entire empire. All those negative energies combined would act as a catalyst for the perils to awaken in their most powerful form, which is what we face in the game after freeing them from the seals that managed to hold them captive. Everything seems to be linked to the importance of precious metals and gold in this story, but would this be the end of it? Or maybe one soul in pain would be reincarnated as one of this generation's Pokémon? The Go in its name means spirit in Japanese. And my theory is that the first Pokémon of the Golden Go line to exist was the reincarnation of that merchant executed by the king to steal their treasures. It's nothing new in the series that some Pokémon are the reincarnation of human souls, especially those who died in tragic ways. The fact that it has a special affinity for appearing in areas near castle ruins is further proof. Not to mention how the Pokémon carries around a small fanny pack as a merchant would do, and the Pokédex entries that talk about its ability to make good friends with people, like any good merchant. Who needs to be good at sweet talk to charm potential customers and make good contacts? Anyway, I hope you've been paying attention, because there's a test coming up. In almost every generation, we have this occurrence in which at first glance some Pokemon seem totally out of place, but when you dig deep into the game's clues, they end up becoming one of my favorites. With this and the previous videos, we would have covered the only Pokemon I wanted to talk about. Just kidding. I'm already working on a video where we'll discuss all the new generation Pokemon, their origins, designs, and concepts. So hit that subscribe button to let me know you're looking forward to it, and I'll hurry up. In the meantime, check out the videos I made solving the mysteries of the paradox forms on screen right now. Be nice.